Whoops. I did what some people might call a fucky wucky. We won't focus on that bit though. Just pay it no mind. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. Don't worry about this. I planned it that way. You see, cause I'm clever. Anyway, welcome back to the podcast, people. Been a while since I've done one of these. Been a long while, in fact. I hope you guys are having a froggy fresh day, and that all of the things happened exactly the way that you wanted them to. Wouldn't that just be absolutely lovely? I would be recording this on my main PC, but unfortunately, I'm not exactly how you would say flush with hard drive space right now, so we'll just have to do. So as you could probably tell, by the title, we're going to be talking. We're going to be talking about some things. Just a little bit of stuff here, a little bit of stuff there. We're going to be talking about just a couple of things. To do with one of my favoriteest things in the entire world. Can you guess what it is? Can you guess what me, a VTuber, would possibly have as one of their most favorite things? Can you guess? I bet you can't. But it's just so beyond you, it's video games. Yeah, get wrecked. It's video games, you have no idea. God damn, it's been a while since I've had to use this. I forget where everything is. Originally I had this set up with one other person. Unfortunately, don't talk about it. Anyway, that's not here now. So, like, I as a creator, as a gamer, as a person, as a general human being with a motherfucking pulse, have been playing video games for a very, very long time. So I just had to take care of some things. It is me. I've been gaming for a while. To give you an idea of how long I've been gaming since way back when you could rent a Nintendo 64 at a video game store. I've been gaming since video stores were still a thing. You remember Blockbuster? Do you remember Blockbuster? Who remembers Blockbuster? I remember Blockbuster. For those who don't know, video stores before the advent of Netflix, even before YouTube, it was pretty much a store where you could go and rent recordings of TV shows, movies, recordings of other things. You know what I'm talking about. Everyone's been in the video rental store, and they have most definitely seen that one section that they weren't allowed to look into, but we all looked in there. Don't lie. Don't lie, I know you did. That's how long I've been gaming for. I think the earliest thing I ever gamed on was what's called a Commodore 64. Well, no, an Amiga 3000, sorry. Yeah, Commodore Amiga 3000. God, that was an old thing. That thing, like, had a power supply that put the power supply that went into your Xbox One to fucking shame. That is how big the power supply for that thing was. And that wasn't even that great. Like, at the time, like, gaming wasn't even remotely what it was now, but that's all I had. And you know what? I had a fucking blast. But you know, some time ago, I had the idea to do a bit of presentation, a bit of a recap on the history of video games as I understand it, and that project later rest. But what I ended up with was a hell of a lot of research and some pretty interesting observations on gaming as a whole, and it all stemmed from the Baldur's Gate 3 incident. But before we talk about the Baldur's Gate 3 incident, let us take a step back and discuss, if we can, gaming as a concept. See, gaming can be loosely divided into three parts. You have the players, which are the people that play the game. Then you have developers, who are the people who make the game. And then you have the infrastructure which you play on, which could be anything. It could be Steam, it could be your PlayStation 3, it could be your PS Vita, if you were people dumb enough to buy a PS Vita. Like, Jesus Christ, I have never seen like a console crash quite like the PS Vita. Outside of the Virtual Boy, I will give credence to that. That thing crashed and burned. If you don't know what the Virtual Boy is, it was Nintendo trying and failing to do virtual reality as a gaming concept. You want to know how well that went? You want to know? Headaches, blurry vision, and a god-awful experience that was shut down so fucking fast. Like, it shut down so fast that there are very few examples, even less that are functional, out there of the Virtual Boy console. Like, no one developed for this at all. Well, I mean, okay, out of fairness, people did develop for it, but yeah, very, very few. Not a very popular console. But the thing about those three parts, when we think about gaming, when we think about what that means in terms of a functioning entity, is that it cannot function unless all three parts are balanced in some way. Because without balance, everything, like the entire experience, will just fall to shit. Like, you can argue about the minutiae here and there, but you know, reality is you gotta have balance. Otherwise, you're just going to have like a very, very shitty experience for everyone involved. And yeah, like when gaming started out, there were a lot of successes, but there were kind of a lot of unique failures as well that helped shaped the gaming sphere as we know it today. I suppose one of the more infamous examples that I can think of is Space Invaders, developed originally in 1978 by Taito. Pretty simple concept. You control a ship, okay? You with me so far? Not throwing you off? Yeah? Good, okay, awesome. So you control a spaceship, and that's... well, no, you control a tank, if we're being technically accurate. And that tank goes back and forward across the screen, and your objective is to shoot down alien invaders, right? That's why it's called Space Invaders, right? And pretty much you have to shoot them down before they pretty much come up to you and say hello without using lubrication. That's pretty much the gist of the game, right? And you know, as you went through and played the game, you notice that originally, when you start the first level, it goes really slow. Now, a lot of people thought that was intentional. A lot of people thought that, hey, this is how the game has been made, this is brilliant. It wasn't until way after the release of the game that we found out that actually wasn't the case. See, the original creator of Space Invaders, when they set the game up, it was actually set up to be way faster than what it was. Unfortunately, because of hardware limitations at the time, the game didn't reach its intended speed until you got rid of all but, I think, one line of enemies. Now, that was a mistake on the infrastructure side of things. But even though it was a mistake, people went along with it. Why did they go along with it? Again, the whole thing about gaming as a living, functioning entity is that it has to maintain balance. So although it took a massive hit on the infrastructure side of things, the developers and the players collectively agreed that it was okay because it was enjoyable. Another example of how an infrastructure failure can lead to an otherwise balanced experience. Grand Theft Auto. Everyone knows Grand Theft Auto, right? Everyone knows the game. Everyone's played at least a version of the game. I myself am a fan of San Andreas. Loved the game to death. Unfortunately, the re-release wasn't exactly the best experience in the world, but again, when I had a PS2, played the game to death. Absolutely loved it. But the game itself would not exist if it wasn't for the fact that there was a bug in the very, 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 very first iterations of the game. When the game was first being developed, it was developed in such a way where, yes, the cops would go after you. However, the coding wasn't set up so that the cops would go after you as intently as they did. Developers tried to fix it, tried to mess with it, and then decided, as a last Hail Mary, that they're just going to put it out there to the test group, see what you think. And it was released under the code name Racing Chase. Now, they didn't know how gamers were going to receive it. Because again, they were releasing a game that had code that was supposed to do one thing that did something completely different. But they're like, we've made it, we're running out of time and patience, let's just see, maybe it will work. Not only did it work really well, it's had several games across several generations. To give you an idea of the scope of its success, it's existed since DOS, like Disk Operating System DOS, that's how old it is. And it's had games on Windows 98, 95, the original Xbox, it's had games on the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, PlayStation 2, and it's just continued to go on and on and on and on and turn into this absolute juggernaut of a success story. So much so that Grand Theft Auto 5 Online, which, funny story, the only reason Grand Theft Auto 5 Online is as successful as it is was because when San Andreas was released on PC, people modified the game to make it multiplayer, then expanded that multiplayer experience. Rockstar saw that and was like, I can make money off of that shit. Boom, Grand Theft Auto 5 Online. Grand Theft Auto 5, right? Let's look up how long Grand Theft Auto 5 has been around for, okay? Let us see how long. Okay, how long has GTA? Okay, so searching, come on. So it was originally released way back in 2013. It's now 2025. That's 11 years. 11 fucking years. That's not even the game itself. That's not even the core game. That's not even like the storyline. That's just people getting online being dickheads. What's interesting is the experience itself has also been profitable for Rockstar as well. Not only are they making money off of in-game currency, but the amount of data that they've received from players as they play the game from different locations, how they've fucking seen how different pieces of hardware can react to different pieces of code in real time, has led them to create Grand Theft Auto 6, which, okay, yeah, Grand Theft Auto 6 been delayed for a really long fucking time due to technical issues. But all that wouldn't have existed, all that success wouldn't have existed. We wouldn't have Vice City, we wouldn't have Chinatown, we wouldn't have Niko Belikov, we wouldn't have Big Smoke, we wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for the fact that the original game was never supposed to work. That is probably one of the best examples I've seen, at least, where you've been able to balance every single corner of the gaming Triforce. Just you can't beat that example. I'm sorry. Another example of how people have made interesting tweaks with gaming infrastructure is Crash Bandicoot. Now, I played Crash Bandicoot on the PS1, right? I love that game. Again, couldn't really get my head around platformers at the time, but hey, I enjoyed it. Here's the thing, though. It's when Naughty Dog was creating Crash Bandicoot, they actually ran into a technical problem with the PlayStation 1's internal memory, because even though they made the game to theoretically run on the PS1's hardware, because there was an internal memory limitation, they couldn't really get the game to load, and this is after they cut the game down to size. This is after they tweaked it so that would only load so much of the level at a time. Because Crash Bandicoot, because there's a lot going on, it doesn't actually load the entire level, it loads it in segments. The only way that they could get around that was the developers. They had to pretty much crack open the PS1's hardware, and in combination with partners at Sony, which they weren't even supposed to have contact with, because Sony didn't want to help them out with this. They had to Naughty Dog had to pester Sony for ages. Days on weeks on months they had to pester them, and eventually they got not given the answer, but pointed in the right direction. And they eventually figured out that there was a way to override this memory limitation. Now, it did involve a lot of, trial and error with code and tweaking other aspects of the game, but eventually they managed to override that memory limitation and ship it out in such a way where all they had to do was create the game, put it on a disc, ship it out, you're done. And just since then, they've pretty much had their own level of success. Now, unfortunately, as clever as the people at Naughty Dog are, they're not as active as they used to be. They've had a couple of games come out here and there, but they are nothing like what they were at the PS1 era, I should say. Which is a shame, because they are very, very, very clever people. But since we're going that far back, excuse me, something went down my throat. Since we're going back into the before times of gaming, since we're looking that far into it, I gotta touch base on the original Doom. I'm sorry, but it's actually quite funny what happened with that. See, when the first Doom was released, right, on floppy disk, it was released before DMCA was a thing. It was released before copyright protection was a thing. And people very quickly figured out that it was very easy to share it from one computer to another. And back then, you could play LAN games with Doom pretty easy to set up, from what I've been told. Haven't had to do it myself, but I've been told it's really easy. So in comes IBM. Now, IBM didn't really perceive Doom as a threat, but people bought their copies of Doom into work, started sharing it around, started playing LAN games, and because of the limitations of hardware at the time, they played it so often, so frequently, they shared it so often, that it actually crippled IBM's network, to a point where, to this day, IBM has an outstanding policy that you cannot play the original version of Doom on any of IBM's hardware. Period. End of. And you think by now they'd lift it, but apparently they have not. And to this day, there have been other examples of successes in the industry. I'm honestly at a loss as to what I should cover first. Because, you could pretty much throw a stick into Steam's library and you could have it land on something that could be considered a success story. I suppose if I had to pick one, I suppose if I had to just reach out into my memory and pick a specific example, one of the most successful games, at least in my mind in recent history, was Baldur's Gate 3. Now you have to keep in mind, Baldur's Gate 3 released where games, even in its genre, capitalized on DLC like you wouldn't believe. It came from a time, it came from a place and a period and a time where charging people, nickel and diming people for every little bit of DLC was the norm. That's where this came from. This came from a time when Blizzard was charging people AAA game prices for mounts in World of Warcraft. This came from a time where people charged you base rate for your game and then base rate again for DLC. This came from a time when people were getting into Overwatch, where people were loving it, where people were hating it, and then Overwatch 2 released, and people would charge money for it, and then people realized very quickly that it's just original Overwatch with a 2 painted on it. That's where this game come from, and it could have been so different. They could have charged you for every single update. They could have charged you for every single character. They could have done so many things with their pricing studio. Do you know what Larian Studios did? The studio behind Baldur's Gate 3 did. Do you want to know what they did? They didn't do that. Instead, they took the approach that we are going to charge you AAA prices for this game. That's it. We're not going to charge you for any of the DLC. We're not going to charge you for any of the updates. We are just going to release the game. We are going to make the best game we can. And we're going to support our customers the best way we can. That game and recent history, because of that mentality, because of their focus, because of their willingness to develop such a game, because they were developing it for their people, because it was developed by people who were fans of D&D that the game is based on. Because of that, because there was so much passion involved from people in the studio, from fans in the industry, from fans of Critical Role, Geek and Sundry, from people who watched so many different podcasts, such as Fool's Gold, such as the Adventure Zone, because they focused so much on just creating the best player experience possible, it released 2023 Metacritic score 96 out of 100 with their team of 400 staff. Now that may not sound like a lot, but 400 staff is not a very big number as far as AAA studios are concerned. They blew it out of the fucking park. It sold so many fucking copies. Do you want to know how many copies it sold? Do you want to have the slightest idea? Because I'll tell you. I'll do it. I swear to God. This isn't just me stalling for time. It is. I am stalling for time. I'm being facetious. It sold 2.5 million copies during early access. Coming into 2024, 10 million. That's a million. That's a 10 million sales early 2024. Coming into late 2024, 15 million sales. Do you want to know what its total revenue was? $711.9 million in sales across all platforms. Team of 400, AAA studio, 711.9 million dollary dues. And you want to know what the funny part is? That's the conservative number. It is entirely possible that they sold way more than that. What were their player base numbers? At launch, 875,000 players at launch. That is a alarming amount of players. Like, I want you to, if you genuinely can, name one, just one, game that has had that many concurrent players during launch. Not only that, it is still, to this day, on Steam, holding overwhelmingly, that's overwhelmingly positive, 674,584 reviews. That is statistically breathtaking that a game can do that, let alone from a AAA studio. And the game is so good. So popular is the game that the devs actually had to take a step back and go, no, we have to stop developing for this game, otherwise it is the only game that we'll be developing. Sorry, can't do it. And I think that says a lot about Larian Studios and what they've achieved. And what this means is amazing, because Larian Studios made it very clear to everyone in industry, to everyone who is an aspiring developer, to all of the studios, both AAA and indie, that you do not have to price gouge people to make a good game, let alone a game as successful as Baldur's Gate 3, with, again, Metacritic score 96 out of 100. They've shown that if you have passion to the game that you're making, they've shown that if you have dedication to yourself, your studio, your team, your idea, your concept, whatever it is you're trying to make as a game, you can achieve success. Great example of that. Schedule 1, released by one guy. One guy out of Australia, completely by himself. Little cartoony, chill game about you growing drugs, right? Pretty basic loop. You grow drugs, you sell drugs, you grow more drugs. Try not to get caught by the police. Pretty simple loop. Happens to work. To the tune of 8 million copies sold in under a year and 125 mil in sales. And it's still going. It's still growing every single day. What's interesting is the game isn't even complete yet. It's sold as a half-baked game that did all of that. Let's see EA try pull that shit off. Another example, Repo, developed by two guys. 14 million copies, 100 million plus in profit, and climbing, with a current player base of around 13,000 people active. 2 guys did that. And I suppose what I want to say is this. You don't have to be a AAA studio to make a game that is balanced from the perspective of the developers, the players, and the infrastructure it plays on. You just need a dedicated crew, you need a good idea, and you need to have key, and I think this is the most important thing, you need to have genuine passion for what it is that you are doing. Otherwise, you're going to have examples of Mass Effect Andromeda, where it was a really good concept made by a really corrupt company that fell to shit. I played the game myself, loved it. Went to shit because EA didn't like what they were doing. Or you could have examples of Deus Ex Machina, which was a game released way back in Windows 98. Re-released as Humankind Divided. Fantastic game. EA shut down unfortunately, the Montreal studio was shut down to save money. Series absolutely died. Could have done way better than what it was. You could have the re-release of The Sims. Again, I played The Sims way back when. Fantastic game. Was released as a buggy, unfinished mess. You could have the re-release of GTA San Andreas, a game that had all of its content cut due to copyright issues, a game that was a functional disaster that would crash for no reason, and the only reason Rockstar released that was, again, to make money. And all of those games have the one thing in common. They were focusing on the wrong thing. They were focusing on generating dollars, money, dinero, profit, and because of that, they had failure after failure after failure because they were too focused on the wrong part, and they did not balance the experience for all parties involved. In spite of that, in spite of all of these examples of AAA studios of doing the wrong thing, we need to focus on what everyone in gaming industry has done right, and note that in spite of the failures, there is a lot of success that shows it is possible to succeed if you focus on your passion, on your team, on your player base, and focus less on making money and more on making a genuinely good experience. Because that's what video games is all about. It's not about making money. It's about logging on to your favorite game and then just clocking out from the world for a couple hours. It's about coming home from a 8, 9, 10, 12-hour shift and hanging out with the boys, shooting the bad guys. It's about farming resources. It's about racing their car. It's about managing F1 teams, if that's what you're into. It's about the experience and making it just so enjoyable. And the great thing about it is still possible to do that both now and in the future. And if you are someone who's disheartened by what you've seen from AAA studios, note that they are the exception, not the rule. And there is still hope going forward into the future of what gaming is. And as someone who has been gaming since well before the millennium, I can tell you with certainty that the future is bright, and all we are seeing right here, right now, is a beautiful beginning. Anyway, my name is Poptart. That's all I have to say on gaming. If you like what you've seen, you can subscribe to me on Twitch. I'm active on Twitter, not so active on TikTok, but you can follow me there. And if you have something that you'd like to see or something that you'd like me to talk about, feel free to slide into my DMs. Anyway, that's been it from me. I thank you so much for joining and sharing some of your time with me. That's bye-bye for now, and I will see you on the next podcast.